In today's video, I am super excited to be sharing a seller's story with Crystal Wren, who recently went through a 7-figure exit. Crystal and I first met 2 years ago when she had just launched her first product. We did some one-on-one coaching together, and today, 2 years later, she's already sold her brand. Crystal's first product was what we would call a failed product. It was a very copy-pasted product that cost around $10, no differentiation at all. And she didn't give up. She learned from her mistakes, although there's no mistakes in business, it's just lessons. But she learned from her mistakes and then went to launch multiple other products and eventually built a brand in the decor niche, going after a specific type of buyer avatar. And she did an amazing job. The journey wasn't easy. At some point, she only had $500 left in her account because she had invested $100,000 into stock. She tells the good, the bad, the ugly, and I think that if you're interested in selling on Amazon or already selling on Amazon, it's just a very inspiring and motivational video to watch and hear her journey. So if you're interested in that, make sure to watch the video till the end. If you're new here, my name is Sharon Evan. I'm an Amazon seller and I'm also an Amazon coach. I do one-on-one coaching with sellers. If you're in need and help with your Amazon journey, you're welcome to book a coaching call with me. I'll put the link for that down below. If you also have not subscribed yet to the channel where I bring out weekly videos, I encourage you to subscribe and also hit that notification bell so you know when I bring out more videos. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. In today's video / podcast, I am so excited to bring on a seller story with Crystal Wren. How are you doing, Crystal?
Good. How are you? Hi, Sharon.
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited about interviewing you today because
Likewise.
I've been I've watched your journey from the beginning. And, you know, especially in your first year. So like seeing where you've gotten up to today, I'm just so excited about you sharing your story with our listeners and the channel. So thanks so much for making your time to be here. We all appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Before we start, can you just give a really quick intro basically on, you know, who you are, and obviously you're an Amazon seller, so you know, but just a really quick intro to who you are.
Yeah, sounds good. So you know, my name is Crystal and I was born and raised in China, and I lived there for until I was about 20. I then moved to the US and Canada. I was there you know, studying, and then I was working there in Canada, and then I came to Singapore, which is where I live currently. So I came here initially for my MBA, and then I graduated. I started working. You know, fun story, I was actually also in Abu Dhabi for a while in between. Yeah, so like now this is where I live, and I also kind of work here as well. So yeah, that's and I would say, you know, so that's my life journey. And in terms of you know, my career wise, and I was always a management consultant. So I work with a few different consulting companies. The last company I worked was Oliver Wyman, so it's one of the top management consulting companies in the world. And after that, I actually started my own Amazon business. I was, you know, a solopreneur, and I basically own 100% of my company. I self-funded from day one, never took any, you know, outside external funding, and I exited my business within 2 years of starting it.
That was an amazing, like, quick introduction. I love that. Thank you. So that's also part. I mean, I would have asked you to come on anyway, whether you exited or not. But you and I haven't been in touch for a while. Although I've been in the background, like seeing your posts on Instagram. But that's part of the story, is that you started your business around 2 years ago, and then you exited really recently.
Right.
And we're going to tell you a story more in depth now. So thank you so much for that intro. So you mentioned that you have a degree. You worked for a company. I'm pretty sure you probably had a really good salary. And then where did the crazy idea come from to start selling on Amazon? And,
Right.
Eventually I can't remember, did you leave your job eventually?
Yeah. So this is a story. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So like I remember, I don't even know, like this is probably back like 10 years. And I always wanted to own some kind of business, like, and I would think about so many different ideas, think about a cafe or think about like a market research company, like just random, right? But I knew I always wanted to do something in entrepreneurship. The thing is, before I had some immigration issue, like I was always on a visa when I was in Canada until I got my permanent residence there. But then I moved to Singapore. So I was like another immigrant here, right? So like the thing about that is that when you're on a visa, it's really hard to start your own company because you're dependent on your employer. So basically I got my permanent residence in Singapore and I immediately started my company. Like I think that, the same week or something, super fast after that. So it was like, in terms of doing business, I always wanted to do my own business because I just felt like I was different from, a lot of my coworkers. So first of all, like, my boss will give me negative feedback, right? And they're like, oh, Crystal, you're so independent. First of all, I wasn't sure why that was a bad thing, but, like they're like, oh, you're too independent, you take too much risk or this and that. Like, it's all just like a bad thing to them, and I just, but like, that's who I was, right? Like, I don't want to change that about me. And I always knew that I wanted to do something that fit me. Like, I don't want to just fit something else that is not me. And so that's the first. And secondly, I always knew that I had this passion about consumer products because I just felt like not just, not like, making a quick buck. I know a lot, some people in Amazon, like they think about it as like a place where you make a quick buck. But I felt like in order to do any business which lasts longer, you need to have that passion, you need to like love what you do. Otherwise, you're not going to last a day, right? So for me, like the reason why I like consumer goods is because I remember like my cousin, she was a fashion designer and she had her own line of clothing and she had a store. Like I just thought like, back 5-6 years ago, I was like, okay, this is so cool. Like people are using her creation, they're carrying her bag with her name on it, right? And that's hers, right? And then every time people buys her stuff, it's a recognition, it's approval of her creativity. And I just thought that was like such a great business. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, right, finally that I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do, I was thinking, okay, I want to do something consumer goods space. And Amazon happened to be a very good way to reach like millions of people, in a basically overnight, right? Like, so it is super easy. You can test your product in a mass market. So that's what attracted me to Amazon. It wasn't like, okay, I want to make money. There's so many other ways to make money. I can, be like a crypto trader or day trader, right? Like that is not that is not that. It's about what I wanted to do, right? So I discovered the opportunity then.
That's amazing. So when you first started, we spoke a little bit before we started recording, and I told you things that like I remembered from the beginning of your journey. And you were crazy enough to launch, I think it was 3 products in a matter of something like 3 or 4 months, like something like that, which at the time, I'd done a lot of coaching, and I think you were probably the only person that I'd ever spoken to that was like, oh, I've just launched this product, but next month I'm launching this product, and then I'm launching this product. So you went all in from the very beginning, which is extremely ballsy of you. Not that many people do that. So let's start from the beginning of the journey on Amazon. So there's a few questions here, but they're more or less like one. How did you decide to go all in? Because you went all in. Later you'll explain how at some point you had only like $5 in your account because
$500.
$500 you because you'd put like 100K into Amazon. So how did you decide to go all in? Because it is for some people, a big risk. And 2, your first product was a very much like copy pasted type of product. If you feel comfortable saying what it is, you can. If not, that's fine. I remember it. But your first product was a very copy paste type of product, and it wasn't really like a long-term product, but you didn't give up. You didn't raise your hands and be like, oh shit, Amazon doesn't work. You were like, okay, I've already been working on my second product, and you kept learning from, not mistakes, but you know what I mean, from the journey itself.
Yeah,
so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think I was definitely learning from the moment on. I did have another job at the time, right? So like I had already stopped working in my daytime management consulting job because that was very demanding. Like I used to work 80 hours a day. Like that wasn't something where you can be like, okay, I'll do Amazon business on the side. Like during the weekend, you barely have any time to like sleep, right? So it's just, that is not possible. So like I already left that job and I was doing Amazon pretty much full time. And but you know, a friend of mine who was a CFO of a cybersecurity company, he wanted me to do some consulting projects for the leadership team there. So I was doing that as my part-time job, and I basically channeled the income that I got from there to Amazon business. So like I wasn't, you know, making money there and spend it, right? Like I was kind of putting all my resources into this thing. And to you, like, you know, like you said, a lot of people, you know, would think that that's a big risk to take, and I don't disagree with it. But the way I see risk, and I felt like it's probably because I had such a long time where like I was just unhappy, you know, in corporates. And I was like, this is not what I wanted. So to me, the way I perceive risk is a little bit different. Like at the time I was like, oh my God, finally there's a chance for me to do something I wanted to do, you know, like, so it's a good thing, right? Like I have the freedom to do it. And so that time I was telling myself, like, this is my saving, like I have, you know, X amount of dollar. And if by the end of the year, I spend all my saving and nothing comes back, then I'll just go find another job. Like, it's not a big deal, you know, it's not the end of the world. Like you lose like a definitive amount of money, right? But like in the meantime, like you gain so much knowledge. I remember one friend of mine who started a company and he failed. So the company didn't work out. And he told me, he said that like, Chris, you don't recognize the risk that you take is actually not that much, because he said that because of his experience of starting a company, Google offered him a really good job because he said not a lot of people had the P&L responsibility. Not a lot of people, you know, like they bet their own money, that they operationalize the entire business, like, and that's very rare. He said that skill set is very you know, like desirable for a lot of people out there. So like to me, that wasn't like, I wasn't having this mindset being like, I want to go into it, and if I don't make money, I'm a loser. You know, I'm like, okay, like finally there's a chance for me to do it. So let's see what can I get out of it, right? So that is like me thinking. And yeah, and you know, as you said, that I was launching products very quickly because you know, I felt like I'm one of those people who had a bit inertia initially. So I'll be like, should I start? Should I not start? You know, and then, but as soon as I commit myself into it, I'm like, okay, I gotta go. Like this thing is happening yesterday. So like I had that like very fast pace. Like I wanted to do this. I'm a little bit impatient. So yeah, like the first product I did didn't pan out to be, you know, like a success at all. It was a USB light. It was like a very cheap product. I remember I was selling it for like maybe $10-12, and that left me with like no margin, right? So that was a clear mistake. It was a business mistake, right? Because you should never sell anything that doesn't make you any money. Like that is just like 101. But I didn't give up because you know, like you know, my brain is already starting working. You know, like I was like, okay, I wanted this, I want this. So I was already excited about different products. And then so to me, like I just wanted to see them materialize, you know, like it wasn't about, oh, okay, well, this thing sucks, so it doesn't work out, so I suck, and therefore I need to give up. Like I didn't think about, I was just like, okay, like let me try to learn from this, or maybe I didn't do this thing well. Okay, now I learned the next product and the next product, right? Until I like, you know, I don't know, utilize the entire fund that I dedicated myself to. So that's my mentality, basically. And then so sorry, I know, you know, it's a long.
No, you're doing amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one question you also allude to is that how does this thing evolve over time, right? So I think that you know, I initially didn't have a very clear idea of what I wanted. And I think that like if you don't know what you want initially, like that's totally fine. You know, you're not here, nobody's born here to like know what they want, right? Like people we are born here to learn from your experience. So I felt like as long as you have that, that's good. So like I felt like over time, I know what I like more, and I also know what will work for this brand more. So like I initially was kind of just like shooting darts on, I see which one sticks. But after 2, 3 products, I felt like the personality of the brand comes through much more strongly than before. So I just started to like, pile more products on top of that, right? That fit the brand. So that's how I started.
So, wow, I have so many questions that came up while you were talking. So I was listening to you, and then my brain was going through with all these questions. So with the first product, which was like the LED or the USB light thing, so that was the first product you launched. It was around like a $12 product. It was very much like a copy pasted type of product where there wasn't that much, if any, sort of like differentiation to it. We're also talking 2 years ago, I think. I think it may have been a little bit more.
2 years.
Yeah, like 2019 or 2020.
2020, but it's like March, April.
Yeah, really early 2020, where like things weren't exactly how they are now. Let's put it that way. A lot has changed and evolved in the Amazon world in the last 2 years. And it didn't really go that well. And you'd already put money into, like, you'd already placed the order for your second product. And a lot of people at that time would have been like, oh shit, it's not working. I made a mistake, blah, blah. And you were like, okay, what mistake did I make here? Right? Yeah. Like, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was a lesson learned, but what lesson can I learn from this first product? And then make sure that I, learn from that lesson for the rest of my products.
For sure.
So what was like a lesson learned from that first very copy pasted product, which is really just like an opportunity type of product rather than like a long-term type of product?
Right.
You know what I mean? What was the lesson learned from that one?
For sure. I think, so the way I see it is not like, first of all, you should never think that yourself as a failure, or mistake, right? I think that people tend to take things way too personally. A lot of times things just happen to you randomly, like we're talking about business, we're talking about life. So like, I feel like you shouldn't never take things too personally. So if this thing doesn't work out, doesn't mean that you are a failure, doesn't mean that you are a mistake, right? It just means this product is maybe a mistake, is probably the wrong thing at the wrong time, so that's how I saw it. And I think that lesson I learned from that product was like it was a very clear, like soon as it hits the market, I was like, oh shit, like I didn't do this thing, I didn't think about it thoroughly, because I felt like you need to have, like you need to have a product that has a margin enough for you to make it's like a mistake margin, right? So like if you only give yourself $1 of a margin, right? What if your competition intensifies? What if your supply chain, cost jacks up tomorrow, right? You need to spend more money on marketing. I mean, like you don't have that buffer for yourself, right? So and I basically chose the worst product because like it was a cheap product in a very competitive market, right? Sometimes I would say oftentimes go hand in hand. The cheaper it is, the more competitive it is. That's just, my rule of thumb, but like, I didn't think about it at the time. I was just carried away by the product idea. So that was the biggest lesson.
So the biggest lesson was mostly like looking for products that actually have margin, and the fact that you didn't leave yourself wiggle room. You just gave a really great example that I speak about a lot as well, because like, especially in the last 2 years, what we've learned is that everything can be extremely dynamic, meaning shipping prices suddenly going from, $4,000 from a container to $25,000 to a container, and cost of labor going up in China and all sorts of different things, PPC price going up, where if all you left yourself was like $1 wiggle room, right? That's a really big problem. So I call it wiggle room, you call it buffer, it's same thing. I think wiggle room is something that's really, really important to leave yourself or like miscellaneous shit that can come up, basically. And then you launched your second product and not that long after your third. So what can you tell us about the journey from, the second product and then the third product, which I think was a much more expensive product? It was like I don't like $50 or something, right? If I'm not mistaken.
It was like 90, you know,
$90 product. And it was also a big and heavy product.
Yeah. That tells you like I really, you know, I'm like all over the place, you know. So like it's not like I was like, okay, this is strategy. I think I'm more of a idea person, you know, like I learned how to execute, but like that is not my innate, you know, like my passion, right? Execute. I think that you need to do that. So the evolution literally just went, you know, so, you know, my first lesson was, okay, well, it's a little bit too cheap. But I also discovered that I wasn't really, like, I wasn't into electronics, you know, I wasn't even thinking, okay, electronics is too competitive and maybe there's too much black hat, which, you know, later on I learned that is a category where like, there's a lot of black hat, you know, you probably should not go into it if you don't know what you're aiming for. But I just went with what I liked, right? So like you know, the category that I chose was home decor, especially like textile. So like a lot of soft, you know, thinking about like pillows, like rugs, you know, curtains, like whatever. So like kind of soft decor. And I liked it because I feel that I wanted to bring warmth to people and people's home at the time. During COVID, it was such a depressing time and everybody's kind of stuck at home. And I felt like everybody's looking for some kind of comfort and safety, right? So I kind of combined that with my idea, and also, which I also added charity spin to it later on, that like I supported, you know, the domestic abuse hotline in the US. So like I would donate to that because I was like, okay, like a lot of women are stuck at home and, you know, you can see the domestic abuse incidents rising. And I was like, my products bring warmth to people's life. So like that has a linkage, right? So like, and I just kind of went with that flow. I felt like that was more me. And the price point, you know, as we mentioned, it was also much higher. So that, and it was also a product in demand, so that helped too. So it just really helped me to kind of kick off that brand and its personality.
I've never heard you speak like that about this brand, so that was very heartwarming to actually hear you, you know, say that. That's beautiful. And the charity part of it, so there was a few things I heard there. The first part was that you may have, because I know your brand, you may have launched like random things within home decor that didn't necessarily like focus on a very specific, like the same buyer avatar, but rather like a category, and then you would find niches within that category. So let's just pretend that it's a rug, so like a very specific type of rug, you know, like things like that. You weren't just like, oh, let's just like launch a black rug. It wasn't like that. It was very specific type, etc. And what I kind of heard there was like your brand story was something that you put across, branding was something that you put across, and then like also showing your brand values by, for example, adding in the fact that, you know, the charity side of things as well.
Right.
So how important do you think that branding was within your journey, or was it not really that important and it was more like opportunities within your category?
Yeah, so I think it's a tough question to answer because I feel like depends on who you're talking to. They might tell you different things, because I also sold my business, so like I kind of roughly know what the buyers are looking for. And I felt like, and also know the brands that they acquired, right? Like, you know, many of them. And I would say like Amazon is a tricky place because you see people selling, I don't know, like, you know, curtains that is black curtain or white curtain, and they probably just got like 10,000 reviews. And then there are such like premium real estate that the buyer want to acquire. So to the buyer, if you have that brand, they don't care. You can be called A, B, C, D, E. They wanted to acquire that category. So like in that incident, you know, in that case, it doesn't really matter, right? But then for me, I felt like I think as a seller, you should never ask, you know, okay, like, am I gonna like, is it good for me to do this, or is this good to? I think the answer lies within yourself. You already know. Like for me, I'm not one of those people who can just like start a corner store and run like just because I wanted to make money, right? I need some substance in it. And so indirectly to answer your question about like branding, to me was very important. I need to have that in order to keep going, right? Like I need to be like, okay, like I wanted to do these designs, and I can see that these kind of people like my product, so I want to create more products for them. And also, like I think this is kind of ugly, I want to choose that or whatever. I think this, so like to me that was never like opportunistic approach, even though like you gotta be realistic too, like you cannot sell another USB light, like it's just like it's a business, right? So like you need to like balance that. But like to me, so I would say it's a balance, but I'm more geared towards the branding side now. I went to a Prosper show, right, like in March, and funny story. I mean, so guess how many girls there were? Like, no, there's no women sellers. In this industry, it's extremely male dominant. And I think they will see me and they're like, oh yeah, she must be working for marketing. Because they don't think that I will be another seller, right? So I would say that after talking to many men, and I don't want to stereotype here, but I do think that like a lot of them tend to be very opportunistic, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. We're just different people, different approaches. Like some people are excited by the money behind it, some people are more excited by the substance. I mean, like, so I tend to just be more geared towards that side.
So I have something to tell you about the women's side of it, just to give you another perspective of it. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching and I work with a lot of sellers. Right. And first of all, obviously because of a woman, I also have, my audience is about 50-50 men and women. Right. And same with my coaching, is around 50-50 men or women. Like I wasn't at Prosper, even though I was offered to speak at Prosper, and you won't see me at any of the events. And a lot of the reason for it is because I'm a mum. And there's many mother sellers that just getting away from your house for a couple of days for Prosper or something like that, or even for a week, isn't easy. So that's one. And number two, there's plenty of women sellers out there, but they feel intimidated a lot of the time just because, I'm speaking to you after coming from London last month, hosting like a women's event. I hosted with Isabella Hamilton. We hosted Branded by Women. And it was a women only speaker, like only women spoke, but there were both men and women in the crowd. So when it comes to women specifically, first of all, yes, it feels like it's very men dominated, but there are a lot of women sellers out there. They're just not like doing what you're doing right now. A lot of them don't feel comfortable being behind a screen or like talking about it or going to the shows. A lot of them are also mothers. So first of all, well done for going to Prosper. And second of all, well done for also coming on here, because it's important for women to also see women, because if you can do it, first of all, like you're super kick ass, and you're like, when I decided how to name the alpha group, like calling it alpha, like you're full on alpha, like you really, really are. Cause you come in, you give 100%, you come to dominate, you come to kick butt. And that's like your entire mentality. And I think it's also important specifically for women. Also, men can be extremely inspired by your story, but also women specifically, I can tell you that would be very inspired just by you sharing your story, as well. So like off subject a little bit, but it's true.
I gotta say that I think over time I become a little bit more beta. Initially, I was more, because I feel like, I think the business journey, there's so many things you cannot control. So like, I'm just like pretty zen, like, over time become more and more zen. And, like, I gotta say, like, maybe it's a coincidence, but like, I started to meditate when I started Amazon, because it was such a roller coaster ride. I felt like I need to like center myself, so I've been doing meditation for more than 2 years, like tremendously helped me.
It'll be interesting once you have children to hear how your story is when you're, because here's the thing, I wish I could meditate, but like my son drives me crazy. So there's like this difference when once you become a mom, I don't know, maybe I should work on it. I wish I could meditate. I feel
like you need to meditate even more because of that.
Yeah, that's true. So you brought up how, and you started meditating because you needed to like get into that zen, because there's so much shit when it's on Amazon, and up to now we've only spoken about the good stuff, but let's try and bring some balance. There's many hardships, you know, in selling on Amazon and online in general, and product development, cash flow wise, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what were your top struggles? How did you deal with those struggles, you know, and things like, you know, dealing with, if you ever did, dealing with hijackers, dealing with PPC, dealing with only having $500 left in the bank, you know, all those types of things. Can you tell us a little bit about the struggles, just so we can bring balance to the story? Because there is, you know.
Oh God, like I don't even know where to start. There's so many, I mean, you know, struggles, right? Or like kind of setbacks, whatever. And I think that many to me was it like, so when I had, you know, a few $100s in my bank account, I felt like I actually didn't feel like, oh my God, like what am I gonna eat tomorrow? Like I don't feel panicky. I felt excited because I was because, you know, first of all, like I'm not gonna just put all my money into inventories or other investments if I think it will be a shit idea, right? Like obviously I put it in because I believe in it, right? I'm like, okay, it's gonna hopefully pay out. And so I was looking forward to it, right? So I was like, you know, like it's a good problem to have, right? Like I think the bad problem to have is that you can't even invest your money out because like nothing is working. So yeah, so that's the first one. But I gotta say there are many struggles. And I think that like, I think the biggest struggle is, so, okay, so one struggle I have, which is a little bit unique to me, is also because like I do this myself, you know? So like, I think I didn't have a partner. I didn't have, like, I was basically 100% me and my team, right? So like, that was just like a struggle by itself where like, I didn't have anybody else to bounce off ideas with, or like, you know, there's moments of panic, like there's no people I can turn even for emotional comfort, right? So like that I felt like was hard, but it also makes me understand how to deal with myself better, right? Because you really don't have anybody to turn to. So so I would say that's challenging. And second one is that you know, the ups and downs of Amazon. Remember, like the biggest, so there's like many struggles, and you probably know this because like there's many struggles, and I would panic, like I would panic text you and be like, oh my gosh, like this happened. But I think the biggest one was that like there's a time when my account was shut down, and it was like because of a linked account issue. So you probably know this, you know, linked account is like the toughest issue to solve. And I literally didn't have any other link account. So it's not like I can even write a PO letter. I'm pretty sure that was a system mistake. But like I need to prove that I was, you know, innocent, right? Because that's Amazon's approach. So I remember, like, you know, I think I got the news on a Sunday afternoon, and I was just like, what the hell? It's like I had never seen this kind of things before. My products just started to like do well. I was making money. I was happy. And then all of a sudden this thing happened. I was like, what is this? Like, I don't even know what that is. So, and I need to like, you know, I was scrambling. I was like looking for law firms, you know, looking for like people to help me out. And then like, you never know. Sometimes, you know, reach out on social media and there's like people who might not know what they're talking about, scammers. And then they want to like take advantage of your vulnerability. But like, I would latch onto that. I was like, because I had no idea, right? So I remember like not sleeping for 2-3 days, and like, or like calling Amazon, the seller support, like 5 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the afternoon, like, because I was in, you know, I'm in Singapore, so there was a time difference between here and Seattle. And I was just dying, you know, like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is hard. And, you know, but the thing about Amazon is interesting because you really need to have that resilience, you know, like, because otherwise you're not going to make it, like, because it's always like this, you know, like it's down and then some shit happened, and then you get yourself out of it, you feel good. And then after a few weeks, when you feel pretty good, like, okay, nothing's going now, you know that some shit's gonna hit the fan again. You can never take it. Like, I learned to cherish it the moment, you know, I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling good, but I know shit's gonna happen. So I'm going to like take this moment to myself. And then you know, next thing you know, yeah, some hijacker, you know, like whatever happens, or like you list got delisted or whatever, right? So yeah, so that's one thing. But I think one big thing I learned after going through all those ups and downs is that you really need to be tough, right? Like, and when I say tough, is that you need to, it's not that you don't get panicky, you know, when you receive a bad email or something bad happen, is you need to learn how to prioritize that, right? Like, if some small listing got delisted, it doesn't affect your account. You don't need to treat it the same way as your entire account got taken down, or that your shipment got lost somewhere, right? So like it's a different levels of urgency. So you don't need to invest your mental energy on every single issue that come up equally. So I would say that's also another big lesson learned.
I have a video on YouTube called The Ugly Side of Amazon, where Prime
I
Day,
watched that.
you've watched it? Or not watched it? So Prime Day 2020, we had one of our brands, like four big products of ours completely taken down. And I made an entire video about what a shitty situation, you know, that was. But that was like 3 or 4 years after already selling on Amazon. You know, the first time we ever had, I think it was the first problem we ever had was a hijacker. Because we're talking about 2016, 17, 18, where like, it was so easy for hijackers back in the day. Today, it's harder for like it's not the same. But back then it was so easy. It was just such a freaking headache, like so easy for people to hijack. And I remember I was pregnant at the time when the first hijacker happened. And I just remember how stressful that was. But today when shit happens, and it does, I still get shit all the time, I'm a lot more resilient to it, you know, because it's like, okay, I've learned that in my story, everything's been figure outable. I do know seller horror stories where like they have lost their entire business. I don't know many of them, but I know that they exist. But I know that like in my story, almost everything's been figure outable. In the end, it's worked out. But like something that I think you and I can agree on is when you choose to sell on Amazon specifically, like you're in their jungle and you need to understand that, and it goes by their rules, and shit does happen. And if you don't have, like, if the first shit that happened, you just were like, oh my God, so panicky and like quitting, you're not cut out for business in general, because shit can happen in every single business. You spoke about, you know, you will look at restaurants. We used to own a restaurant. Do you know how much freaking headaches and how much bullshit comes from owning a restaurant? I used to have an online clothing store that had nothing to do with Amazon, like an online clothing store in Israel. Do you know how much shit comes with owning a clothing store? The amount of returns you have, so much crap. And every single business, lawyers have issues, like everyone that owns their own business, you have your own headaches. Specifically with Amazon, you know, you do have some sort of lack of control on certain things. That's why there are service providers out there to help. You know, yes, there's scammy ones, but there's many, you know, reputable ones as well. But yeah, I feel like because a lot of people are scared of getting into it because of that. And I think hearing your story and you know, my story of where like, yes, shit happens, but it happens in every business. So expect it to happen here as well. You know, and
I think,
no, go for it.
I think one good strategy is to go to the seller forum in like Amazon, you know, when things happen to you, and then you will see what is called horror stories. I mean, there are so many of them. And then like, sometimes I will like be asking for certain specific issues. I'm like, hey, I have this issue. And then I will browse through similar issues. And I was like, oh shit, thank God that didn't happen to me, you know, and then I'll feel much better. I'm like, okay, my issue is not solved, but I'm like, this is horrible. I mean, like I was, you know, like I'm not gloating or anything. I'm just saying like, you need to like really think about like put things in perspectives, right? Like your problem is not the biggest problem, and it's not the only problem that happened in mankind, you know, and other people are able to go through it. And I think you should be able to, I feel like a lot of times it's just emotional toll it takes on you. Like you might perceive it to be bigger than what it is, you know. If you leave it for a day or two, you'll be like, okay, you know, this is not a big of a deal, right?
I mean, there are some like pretty huge things that sometimes happen in business where like they are a big deal, but even those things can be figure outable, you know? So what about cash flow, which is probably one of the biggest things that people speak about today or are worried about today? You know, things have changed since you first started, as you know, supply chain's more expensive, shipping's more expensive, products are more expensive, PPC, everything's more expensive. You need a lot more money than what you did 2 years ago. And then when you are doing really well, like you got to 7 figures in your first year, right? So getting to 7 figures in your first year, which I did as well, just in a very different time than you did. means you need a lot of money as well, because suddenly, you're spending $100,000 on a shipment or whatever it may be. So how did you deal with cash flow and scaling so quickly? Because that has its own headaches. On the one hand, it sounds like fairy tales and unicorns, but there's a lot of headache when it comes to money on that side.
For sure. And I think that, so especially if you sell a seasonal product, right? Like, for example, if it's like more of, kind of flat products and, you need roughly the same amount of money. So like, you can do a cash flow projection. So you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, versus like, I remember my products were quite seasonal. So, some of them, like, especially gifts, like they tend to spike during Christmas or like Mother's Day or whatever, major holidays, Valentine's Day. So like the first year, you probably have no idea. I mean, like, you can only look at other similar products and do a projection, but it's never really what's going to happen, right? So like there's a ton of uncertainty behind. And I think you need to be very rational about it, right? So like, first of all, we're talking about risk. Cash flow management, I think there's different fronts to it. The first one is, like how much you need to invest. And, especially, when there's like a seasonal jump that's gonna come, how much you want to, because, worst case scenario, you might end up with a lot of inventory that you cannot sell, right? And you waste a lot of money. So like, I think you need to ask yourself, like, which cost is bigger? Like, is the opportunity cost of, say being out of stock, but you make the money, right? Like you put X amount of dollar, you get a Y number of dollar, and then there's no money, your money wasted, but you lost a potential upside opportunity, sales opportunity, and you're also out of stock, which means, your ranking is getting worse at the time. So are you willing to take that risk? Or are you willing to take the risk where you might have a lot of excessive inventory, which you need to incur storage costs, yada, yada, yada. So like, is that, but like, you can probably sell that, right? Like in long term, but you will be much slower, but you are never going to be out of stock. So like, which one you want to take? And there's different degrees in between. So I think that is an answer you can only have yourself. And another one about cash flow management is that, like, when I say, like, when you need a lot of money, that is a good problem to have. It's scary. It is very scary, right? Because if you lose, like, I don't know, like $500,000, I mean, like, that's a lot of money, right? So it's like, I mean, it is scary as hell. I mean, like, it's scary to everyone. And I think you can try to do, negotiate with their suppliers, right? Like, come up with a better.
Ask you about terms. Did you negotiate terms?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So you can share the risk with them a little bit, right? And so that's one. And also another one is, maybe you can like watch your stock level a little bit more closely, so you can like have smaller batches like more frequently, right? So that de-risk a little bit, like, obviously there's more risk in the supply chain side, but like, in terms of your own money management side, it's not like a huge like investment all at once. If something changes, your stock is no longer needed. So I felt like it's just like kind of like break them down to bite sizes. So like, if you think about it, huge issue, like you're overwhelmed. But like, if you think about like every single part of it, and then be like, can I do better at this? Or can I do better at that? Then, and worst case scenario is this one. So like, you're a little bit more, like, you understand the situation better. So you're less likely to be scared.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff you're speaking about is mindset, and working on your mindset and the way that you're approaching things. So let's talk a little bit about the choice of exiting. So you scaled the business to 7 figures. By the way, you also went global, right? You weren't just selling in Amazon US. You also started selling in Europe and UK, correct?
Right. So I started. So the brand had a German trademark as well. So it makes entering the EU market much easier. So I was selling the US, Mexico, Canada, as well as UK, and was planning to go into like Germany and other markets.
Did that have a big impact on your scale? Your like the way that you scaled? Did it, from, let's just say, $1 million, were you suddenly doing 2 million? You know what I mean? You don't have to say numbers, but did it impact the way that you scaled?
Not really, just because I felt like it's really, again, I felt like people. Okay, so initially I thought about it too simply, right? I was like, okay, these products do well in the U.S. market, and then the review can be transferred, right? So it's
Yeah.
like you already have a huge asset that's built for you. I mean, you can import all the listings over. I mean, like, so it should be easy, right? So like that's what I thought, but then like the thing is like there's many things, but the biggest thing is you just don't know which product will be popular in the EU market or any other markets, right? Until you try it, and you just like there's no assumptions, like even if I did my research and I was like, okay, like this thing should work, it doesn't work, right? Like it's
Yeah.
something else that works. So like you just never know. So like I think that part, it's almost like you need to have a starter mentality again and be like, I'll just need to see which one works out. You can't take things for granted. So I think that's another, and there's a lot of other costs actually associated with the European market. There's, like I think VAT, like, there's like, shipping costs is not cheap as well. Like it actually tends to be slower than the US, like to ship there. I mean, like in many cases, and so it's actually the margin, depends on the product. Yeah, like I just don't think it's in particular like better than the US market. And I think that like if you do well in the US, like you can keep doing that, like so and obviously I think everybody's situation is a little different. For me, that's just what happened. I did see Canadian market to be really good. It was like growing well, like there, and with the minimal amount of investment I put in, like in Canadian market it was doing well. But you never know, right? Initially, I was like, okay, maybe UK is gonna do well, right? And then, okay, Canada does better. So
It's doing like little tests, and
yeah,
because the only good thing about it, by the way, we only sell in the US and in Canada.
yeah,
We don't
yeah,
sell in Europe. We don't sell in the UK. It's just a business decision that we had. But with the good thing about it, about going and selling overseas as well, is that you, at the end of the day, you're just copy pasting something that you've done in one place to another place, only that you need to understand that the culture can be different, the keywords can be different, the PPC may be different a lot of the times in a better way, but you know what I mean? So it's like, it seems like it's easier to do a test, and then you learn what product is going to stick and what product, isn't.
yeah.
The good thing about Canada is that you can also start obviously with like remote fulfillment before you actually send the stock in.
Yeah.
And then how was the, you were 2 years in and you've exited. So how did the decision look like when you were like, okay, it's time to exit? Was it because suddenly everyone was speaking about exiting and things like that? Or did it have nothing to do with like the industry talking about it and more about, I've done what I can with this brand and now let's exit and start a new thing? Like, what did the mindset of you deciding to exit look like? Because you exited quite early, like 2 years in.
Right. Like I won't say I wasn't a little bit influenced by what's going on outside. I think there's definitely influences there, and I was approached by an aggregator fairly early on. I started my brand, this one in April, I think 2020, and I was approached by aggregator in May 2021. Like it was like a year in, and it was insane. Like that was just really early. Like I wasn't even thinking about it, and I had my own plan. I was thinking about, I wanted to start thinking about exiting in 2022. That was my original plan. But then since they approached me, I then, started to do a little bit my own valuation, started to put my books together, started hiring an advisor. Like I started the whole, gimmick of like kind of exiting, right? And I didn't go with the first one that approached me. So like it went, like actually a few months that wasn't as smooth, just because there's like, exiting, it's like literally a book by itself, right? Like it's completely different from running a business. And I think that my decision point came to a stage where I was like a pretty much typical founder, like I can hustle. I'm a bit of ADD, like I like to do different things. And but then, at some point in a company, I think you need to have experts in different areas, people who know more than you, right? So people who you can rely on, instead of like you train them and then they're your babies. Like So I reached to that point where I'm like, okay, like I can grow this, but in order for this brand to grow more meaningfully, right? Like I'm not talking about like a 10%, like that's the inflation rate now, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, say if you want to double it or something, right? I needed to hire experts. So at the time I was thinking either to hire a full-fledged operational team or that I should just exit it so that somebody else who are well better equipped, have their own company, this and that, like they have their own ecosystem, can take this to the next stage. So I was exploring both opportunities and like both advanced to a level where it's almost like it could either go this way or go this way. And then I eventually decided to go with the selling it. And I think that one of the reasons was also that I like this brand. I felt, this is always going to be my baby. It's going to be my first baby, and it's always going to be special. But I truly believe in doing something that you really love. It's like you can kill, like you can't give yourself like 100% into this, right? And I felt like I like this brand, but I didn't feel like I was in love with it, right? And I kind of knew what I love, like what I'm passionate about, and what I wanted to like change, and what I wanted to contribute. And I felt like, okay, like I think, I wanted to dedicate my time into, different causes, like different, still, product, because, consumer products, because that's what I really like as well. But I wanted to do a different category, a different angle. So I was like, that's why I decided to exit that time.
So you're basically, like many people, exited in order to start all over again, but in a different, in a different category, in a different way. I don't know many people that exited and didn't keep going. You know what I mean? Like most people that I know that exited, they exited a brand and then they started a new brand, and then the goal is to then exit that brand and so on and so on.
Right.
Because things have changed since you started to date, like we said, supply chain, etc. Differentiation is a lot more important than back then, branding, etc. What will you do differently with your next brand? With all the lessons learned from the last 2 years, what will you do differently with your next brand?
I think the biggest lesson I learned was that like I just can't do everything myself. And I think that's a huge, it's almost like I wish I knew this from day one, where like I felt like you need to have a very strong team and you need to rely on the people. And most importantly, like you gotta have that infrastructure, right? Like I have a friend who, they're doing really well, and then like he basically like 8-9-figure seller, and then like he told me that the most important thing was to build that infrastructure, like he was envisioning these are the departments he needed, and then he was finding the people there, and then so he could start one brand, 2, 3, like that was just a machine, right? Like the thing turning to a machine. So I felt like that is one thing like I would do differently, just because like end of the day, I felt like Amazon, it's just like another business, right? Like it can be like a company, it can be like a SaaS business, it can be a retail business, it doesn't matter. But like the core of that is that the organization, and then, the processes and all the stuff that I initially thought was too boring, and I, procrastinated, and, eventually it took, like, it took a toll on me, right? Like, and I realized I should have done it a bit earlier. So that's one lesson like I learned I'll do differently next time.
That's awesome. I think it's an important thing. And I am a good example of that as well, because my husband and I, we do almost everything ourselves. There are things that we obviously hire out, but like still to date, I do all of our PPC. So I think, I don't know if you are a control freak or not, but I am. I
was just gonna say, I was like, I know Sharon, you're a control freak.
I'm a control freak, and it's bit me in the ass many times, the fact that I am that way, but it's worked for us, so it's fine. But I can tell you now, for me today, owning multiple brand businesses, but also the coaching side of the business, I at some point burnt out last year, like majorly. If you look at my YouTube channel, I think you
had a pause, right?
I did.
Where you weren't posting videos.
I had to take a pause, and I had to just I had to prioritize. I had to stop for a second. And my main goal this year is to start hiring and to build like a proper team for for at least one of my businesses so that, you know, I can, because there's only so much one person can do yourself. And like you just said about hiring people that, you know, you hired me as a coach at the beginning for a few sessions here and there. I'm sure you probably hired other, you know, people as well. You kind of did open your mind up to that in the beginning. And even today, where else there are many people that they're just like, oh, I can just do everything myself. And I was like that in the beginning. You know, I was like, I can just do everything myself. You know, I'm really good at learning. I learn from mistakes as well, blah, blah, blah. I know product development. I come from a manufacturing background. You know, my dad used to have a factory, etc. And then you think you're a know-it-all. And then not you, I'm talking now about, you know, I thought I was a know-it-all. And then something I really learned was the minute that I burnt out, it's like, you have to build a team. There's a certain point where you just have to build a team. But I also think that there are things where you were able to do on your own. But there are also things where you have to put processes in place, and you absolutely, you know. One last question, two last questions before we wrap up. By the way, you've been amazing. So that's going to be your approach for processes and being more organized, you know, the second time around, which makes a lot of sense, especially now that you've also exited. So you know what buyers are looking for, etc., and how important it is to have your books in place and so on. What about the approach of, you know, the type of products and branding? Are you going to go for more like opportunity types of things, or are you going to go hardcore brand building? Are you looking at products that are also, for example, social media worthy and utilizing outside of Amazon, you know, marketing, etc. as well? Or are your product decisions going to be more or less, you know, the same? Like, are you going to change anything when it comes to product decisions?
Yeah, so I gotta say, like, you know, even for the last business, we were pretty social, even, you know, that one, right? Like, you know, I would say, you know, for social media growth, like I was extremely organic, never spent a dollar on Facebook ads or Instagram ads or Pinterest. Like it was just, but then we had like, you know, tens of thousands of viewers on Pinterest, like thousands of followers, like, you know, and we were like, so I knew, I mean, even though like, you know, maybe like, you know, in terms of money, like, you know, how much is generated from Amazon, how much generated outside of Amazon, I would say, you know, still a majority of it is from Amazon, right? But like, I always just had that long-term view where I'm like, you know, people can tell me, hey, this is not a brand. And I have people who say that to me. They're like, oh, you know, like you might think that whatever your brand is a brand, but nobody else thinks it, you know, like they think it's just whatever buy from Amazon. Right. And I think you can, you know, whatever that's valid, you can think that way. But I want to think my brand as brand, like, because, you know, it will be small and it will be, you know, hopefully go to a stage where it's big, right? Like, but the thing is that if you never think about it like that way, it will never going to become that way, right? So I always like to, you know, build that, even though you don't see immediate return. I do think profiting is important. Like you can't just running a money loss business, like, you know, like I'm not a tech company, you know, like I have Uber, whatever, like it's burning money and it's okay. But like, I think, you know, especially for us, I felt like we put our own money into it, right? So, you know, the value of a dollar, right? Like you need it, like, you know, this is your money, you're putting it. And if it doesn't profit, it hurts you personally. So I think it's a very good discipline that you've learned. Like that's a way to run a business. So I feel like that will never change. Right? Like I'm always gonna look at it and be like, well, like, does it profit? But in the meantime, I think I will always gonna be a more passionate person. So like I wanted to do something where like my heart tells me it's the right thing to do. So I don't think I'm ever gonna compromise on that. One thing that is a little bit different this time around is that I felt like last time I was pretty much just like an action junkie, right? Like I saw, oh, okay, those are products I want to go for. I bought it. And, you know, that's it. And then for this time, I'm actually doing a lot more research, you know, like I'm reading books, I'm going to places, I'm like doing my field trips, doing my literature reviews, you know, because I wanted to do something where like, I know what I'm talking about. I know like this way is a better way. And I wanted to like contribute that value to the consumers as well. So that I would say that's the one thing that is different.
So there were two things. Number one, it has to be profitable from the very beginning. Like you're going to look at that. And the second thing is you want to start a passion brand, something that you're actually passionate about and that you actually care about. which,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting from my 3 years of doing coaching. I've realized that the only people that really have been able to be resilient are the people that really cared about what they sell. You know, I've seen a lot of people fail. I've seen a lot of people quit. And most of them, it was when they just sold random shit that they didn't care about. And it was just opportunity. And the people that really kept going and fought through like the hard times and the resilience side of the etc. were the people that really cared about, you know, they were passionate about the products, you know, they developed these, no, they didn't necessarily invent it, but they really cared about that specific niche or whatever it is. And I think that it's not a must. There are some people that can just learn. By the way, I'm one of them. I can just learn about something that maybe I don't necessarily love and I can sell it, but I don't know that many people that are like that. Most people, they really do need to be passionate in order to get past, you know, the tough times as well. And then I've got my last question. Unless you have anything to add to what I just said. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think, maybe like 10 years ago, right? Like, when Amazon was kind of like, a game for all, where maybe you can sell whatever, right? Like, and I think that increasingly, and I think even for yourself, like, you always talk about, this customer avatar, like you talk about differentiation. Like, I don't think that you're, 100% mercenary, that you can, you probably can, right? But I don't think you want to do that.
No.
And I think that like, it's, like we're talking about how competition is more intensified, which is true, but I think that like, there's always going to be, look, like retail is never going to go away, right? Like it doesn't matter what's today, tomorrow, like people need to buy stuff. Like it's going to exist, right? So like, I think how you can differentiate, and there's a saying I quite like, is that a genius is like itself, so you can't, if you want to be a genius, you shouldn't just imitate whatever people, you should just be yourself, because a genius is most like himself. So like, I think, the answer lies within yourself again. So now I felt like, once I know what I like wanted, and I just felt like very much at peace. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, even if it isn't successful, whatever, I learn from it, right? And but I think that, like, again, success is, your own definition. So as long as I can make some kind of impact, like, I'm happy with that.
I love that. And I believe a lot, in that. Just because I can be that type of person that can, what I meant was, I may not care about gardening, for example, but I could go tomorrow and learn all about gardening and like really understand the buyer avatar and sell that. And even if like shit happens, still feel passionate. But there are many people where they're not like that. Like if they don't care about it, they can't do it. But yeah, differentiation and knowing who you're selling to and understanding your buyer avatar is like, that's like my life. I believe in that so much. And I think it's like really, really important. So Amazon approached you to create a little mini video, which is also on your Instagram, which is very exciting. How did that happen? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh gosh, so I have a good relationship with Amazon, Singapore, and so yeah, like if they, my account managers just approached me and be like, hey, they're featuring some entrepreneurs, like sellers, because I think a part of it is also because they wanted to promote entrepreneurship, right? For their own benefit. Obviously they want to recruit more sellers, but it's also kind of like make people like know that they can do it, like it's not just for like, like average Joe can do, like, like everybody can do it if you have the will, right? So they wanted to like feature a few stories that highlights that. And I'm just one of the stories, but there's people who like, and then I think there are 3-4 stories, and they're all like locally in Singapore. So one is about like a matcha tea company. Another one is about a baby wear company. Another one is about, I think, a perfume or like some scent company. So they're all local businesses, and they were on Amazon. And so yeah, I was one of them. And it was very interesting though, because, like, I think the shooting was like 9 hours. It was, even though it was only an hour, 1 minute and a half, I was behind the scene for like whole day, I was there and I was shooting. But like, I think, like I definitely think it's meaningful to put my story. I think a lot of people, they don't want to, Amazon sellers, they don't want to talk about their brand. They don't want to talk about their product. I don't know why. I feel proud talking about it. And I felt like, look, if it's going to help somebody else, like I'll do it, right? Like, so like I'll do it all day long, you know. So that's what happened.
I'm really proud of you, Crystal. I think that you've done an amazing job. I still remember the conversations with you, 2 years ago. So seeing you then and seeing you now, there is a difference. I will say, like, you've always been kick-ass, but you're even more kick-ass, now, but you were kick-ass from the beginning. But you can see, like, I can see, the confidence you have now, in the way that you hold yourself, etc. Like, you're amazing. And I think this will be really inspirational. So first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
You did a really, really great job. You explained everything like amazingly. I'm sure that this will inspire many, many people, but also especially women, also young women as well, so
Right.
Thank you so, so much. And I would love to have you back in a year or so from now, so you can tell us, how your next brand is as well.
Thank you, Sharon. I mean, like, you always kick ass, and you always one of my big inspirations. I remember, like, there's a video you said about, like, basically reality check, right? Because you have few videos. Think you even have a I think a post on Facebook about reality checks. And I remember watching that video like maybe 2 to 3 times, because I needed that, I was like, oh, why are things not going my way? Like, just FYI, if you haven't checked out Sharon's videos about, I mean, like, she's better, much better motivational speaker than I am. But anyway, so like, I think those are very valuable, because like that, I felt like accompanied me, like, it really made me feel more grounded, in the times of like difficulty.
First of all, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And second of all, I think that something this industry really lacks is reality checks and, and balance. Yeah. Before we started, I said to you, we spoke about what I'm going to ask you, etc. And I said, it's important for me that we bring balance, talk about the good and the bad, because people get shocked. They're not prepared for the amount of bullshit that comes sometimes with business. It's not with Amazon, it's with business in general. And like, that's what I tried to sort of, tell people. There's the good and then there's the bad, and you got to, you got to enjoy, well, not enjoy both, but there's no good without the bad, so I think that's important. And thank you for also sharing your struggles as well, because I think that that's something really, it's great to talk about how amazing it's been and, exiting, etc. But there were many hardships. I'm sure you had, you said many sleepless nights. I'm sure you may have cried a couple of times. I'm sure, many, many emotions came into it. And it's an emotional journey, especially if you're on your own, like I have my husband, and, where I can go, and sometimes it's a nightmare, but many times it's also amazing, where like we can bounce off each other. Doing this alone isn't easy. And yes, you have people like me in the background, or you have friends, but it's not the same. So also I take off my hat to you and I just say, like, honestly, well done. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah, appreciate it.
Hey, Crystal, thank you so much once again. And I can't wait to invite you back.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed this interview. If you watched it to the end, well done. I hope that it really gives you a kick up the butt and gives you some motivation and inspiration. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do, and don't forget to also like this video if you enjoyed it. I'd love to also hear what you have to say, so please do leave some comments down below. And if you're in need of one-on-one coaching, then I'll also put my link for my website down below as well. And I'll see you all in the next video.